On paper, the new caliber wins. Less recoil, better ballistics, and easy precision. To the internet, the debate between 300 Win Mag versus 6.5 Creedmoor is over. The math says the Magnum is dead. But math does not drop a heavy bull elk when the wind is howling across a frozen ridge. Math does not fix a bad angle in thick timber. That is why guys who have spent 30 years hunting the worst weather refuse to leave their Magnums in the gun safe. This is a collision between two different ways of looking at a hunt. One side wants the most comfortable shot. The other side wants enough margin for error to guarantee the animal goes down, no matter what goes wrong. If you only had one elk tag left, and the weather turned ugly, would you bet your trip on the new internet favorite or the heavy hitter that has worked for decades? The truth starts with what happens when you pull the trigger on massive game. We begin this ranking with the rifle that practically built the modern argument for heavy-magnum cartridges, the classic Remington Model 700. If you want to understand the generation gap in American hunting camps right now, you have to start by looking at what happens when you try to knock down an elk. This is where the debate over the 300 Winchester Magnum gets incredibly heated. Younger shooters who grew up watching YouTube videos will tell you that a modern 6.5 Creedmoor has all the precision you need, and that perfect shot placement is the only thing that matters. That sounds completely logical until you are standing on a freezing ridge in Idaho, looking at an 800-pound bull elk quartering hard toward you at 250 yards. That animal is essentially a walking tank built out of heavy bone and dense muscle. In that specific moment, a perfectly placed lightweight bullet from a 6.5 Creedmoor might not have the kinetic energy to smash through the front shoulder and reach the vitals. But a 300 Winchester Magnum pushing a 200-grain Nosler partition absolutely will. That is what older rural hunters call the margin for error, and the Remington 700 has been delivering that margin for over half a century. From an engineering standpoint, the 700 is famous for its cylindrical receiver and its 3 rings of steel that surround the cartridge case head. It is an incredibly strong action that handles the massive chamber pressure of the 300 Win Mag without breaking a sweat. When you pull the trigger, you are sending a heavy chunk of lead downrange with over 3,000 foot-pounds of energy. It hits like a freight train. Older hunters refuse to give up this platform because they know that nature rarely gives you a perfect broadside shot. Animals step into thick brush, the wind howls, and adrenaline makes your hands shake. When things go wrong, you want a cartridge that hits hard enough to put the animal down immediately, saving you from a miserable night of tracking a blood trail through the snow. But this raw power comes with a practical limitation. The Remington 700 in a Magnum caliber is a heavy, loud piece of machinery, and the recoil is significant. The newer generations often avoid it because it requires actual physical effort to carry and to shoot. Furthermore, some of the newer production models from Remington have faced quality control issues over the years, making older used models much more desirable for guys who know what to look for on the used rack. A brand new Remington 700 SPS in 300 Win Mag has an MSRP of around $750, but you can usually find them on the shelf for about $699. This brings up the primary excuse younger shooters use to avoid the Magnum entirely, which usually comes down to the fear of a sore shoulder. That leads us directly to the Winchester Model 70, a rifle that completely dismantles the internet's favorite excuse about the 300 Winchester Magnum. If you spend enough time reading modern firearms forums, you will inevitably hear that the 300 Winchester Magnum simply kicks too hard to be useful. Younger shooters argue that the heavy recoil causes you to flinch, ruins your accuracy, and makes the gun miserable to practice with at the range. That might be true if you are sitting at a concrete bench rest trying to shoot 50 rounds in a single afternoon, but an older hunter does not buy a Magnum to punch paper all day. He buys it to take 1, maybe 2 critical shots during a week-long hunt. When you are out in the timber wearing a heavy wool coat and your heart is pounding because a mature moose just stepped out of the willows, you do not even feel the recoil of a 300 Winchester Magnum. And if you are carrying a properly built rifle like the Winchester Model 70, that recoil is tamed significantly by the sheer weight and balance of the gun. The Model 70 is often called the rifleman's rifle, and for good reason. It is built around a controlled round feed action, which is a massive mechanical advantage in the field. Unlike modern push-feed rifles that just shove the cartridge toward the chamber, the Model 70 uses a massive Mauser-style, non-rotating claw extractor. The moment the cartridge leaves the magazine, that claw grabs the base of the brass and holds it tight. Why does that matter to a guy in the woods? Because if you are lying on a steep, uneven slope, or if you short-stroke the bolt in a panic because a bear is moving through the brush, that round is not going to fall out or jam. The gun feeds flawlessly regardless of the angle. Older hunters trust this action because it is built like a bank vault and designed for the worst possible conditions. The Model 70 also features a 3-position safety, allowing you to cycle the bolt and safely unload the rifle while the firing pin remains completely blocked. When your hands are numb from the freezing rain and you are climbing back into your truck, that mechanical safety net is worth its weight in gold. The trade-off here is that the Winchester Model 70 is a heavy piece of steel and walnut. Fully loaded with a good scope, you are easily carrying over 9 pounds up the mountain. Younger hunters obsessed with cutting ounces hate that kind of weight, but older shooters know that the mass of the rifle is exactly what absorbs the recoil of the Magnum cartridge, turning a sharp kick into a manageable push. A new Winchester Model 70 Sporter has an MSRP of about $1,199, with street prices typically sitting right around $1,050. But before anyone throws out their heavy-magnum for a lightweight modern alternative, we have to address how the internet completely changed the way people view hunting cartridges. This brings us to the Browning X Bolt, which stands directly at the center of the massive hype problem surrounding the 6.5 Creedmoor. If you listen to modern marketing, you would think this new cartridge single-handedly rendered every older caliber obsolete. The Browning X Bolt is essentially the poster child for the younger generation's approach to firearms. It is a fantastic, highly engineered piece of modern machinery. It features a short, 60-degree bolt lift, which is a brilliant design choice because it keeps your knuckles from hitting the oversized, high-magnification scopes that everyone seems to mount these days. It utilizes a very reliable rotary magazine, and it often comes straight from the factory with a threaded muzzle brake and a lightweight synthetic stock. This is the exact type of rifle that younger shooters bring to deer camp, and they will spend hours pointing to their ballistic charts. They talk endlessly about ballistic coefficients, wind drift, and how the 6.5 Creedmoor can ping steel targets at 1,000 yards while barely nudging their shoulder. And they are completely right on paper. But here is the problem that older, rural hunters immediately recognize. The internet has turned the 6.5 Creedmoor into a magic cartridge, making people forget the basic laws of physics. When you take a lightweight X-bolt chambered in a short-action 6.5 and try to punch through the heavy muscle and dense bone of a mature animal in the wild, you are relying entirely on absolute surgical precision. You lose the massive kinetic energy transfer and the deep penetration that the 300 Win Mag delivers by default. Older hunters know that real hunting does not look like a neat, tidy ballistic chart on a computer screen. Animals move right as you pull the trigger. The wind gusts unexpectedly. The angle changes at the last second. The X-Bolt in 6.5 Creedmoor is an incredibly precise instrument with a crisp, adjustable feather trigger, but the trade-off is steep. In the pursuit of lightweight comfort and zero recoil, you give up the brute force required to anchor a massive animal when the shot placement is less than perfect. You give up the sheer stopping power that prevents you from having to track a wounded animal for miles through the dark timber. The older generation sees the 6.5 Creedmoor hype for what it often is, a marketing trend designed to sell new, highly comfortable rifles to a generation that does not want to deal with the kick of a traditional Magnum. A Browning X-Bolt Hunter has an MSRP of approximately $1,099, with street prices usually sitting close to $950. Up to this point, we have been talking about guns that make sense individually and the fierce divide between raw stopping power and paper ballistics. But the next part is where the whole ranking changes. Because now we are not talking about what works in a perfect scenario on a flat range. We are talking about the reality of where most hunters actually pull the trigger, and why the biggest internet myth might be making you choose the wrong rifle entirely. Before we go higher, I want to know where you stand on this. Would you trust the older, proven Magnum design? Or would you still take the newer, lightweight platform if things got ugly? The internet loves to talk about what a bullet does at 800 yards. The modern shooter buys a rifle based on how little the wind pushes a high ballistic coefficient bullet across a canyon. But if you walk into any rural diner during hunting season and ask the guys drinking coffee how far their last shot was, you are not going to hear about a 1,000-yard sniper shot. You are going to hear about a bull elk stepping out of thick timber at 150 yards, or a heavy deer pausing at the edge of a frozen bean field at 200 yards. This is the massive distance myth that completely changes the debate between the .300 Winchester Magnum and the 6.5 Creedmoor. And there is no better rifle to explain this than the old, reliable Savage 110. When you look at the Savage 110, you are looking at the definition of a blue-collar working tool. It does not have the sleek lines of a modern chassis rifle, and it does not look like something a sponsored shooter would hold up in a magazine ad. But it is incredibly accurate out of the box because of some very smart engineering. The Savage 110 uses a floating bolt head, which means that when you lock the bolt into the receiver, the bolt head can adjust itself just a fraction of an inch to ensure perfect contact with the cartridge in the chamber. It also uses a barrel nut system that allows the factory to set the headspace with incredible precision before tightening everything down. And of course, it has the AccuTrigger, which gives you a crisp, clean break without sacrificing safety in the field. But the real reason the Savage 110 and .300 Win Mag sits at this critical point in the ranking is what it does to an animal at the distances most guys actually hunt. If you are shooting within 300 yards, the massive aerodynamic advantage of the 6.5 Creedmoor simply does not matter. Wind drift is practically a non-issue at that range, and bullet drop is minimal. At those realistic real-world distances, what matters is energy delivery and massive tissue damage. When a .300 Winchester Magnum leaves the barrel of a Savage 110, it is carrying so much raw power that even if it hits a heavy shoulder bone on a massive bull elk, it is going to break through and destroy the vitals. The 6.5 Creedmoor is a fantastic, highly efficient cartridge, but at 200 yards it hits with about 1,600 foot-pounds of energy. The .300 Win Mag hits with well over 2,500 foot-pounds at that same distance. That is not just a small difference. That is the difference between an animal dropping within sight and you spending the entire night walking through frozen woods with a flashlight looking for a single drop of blood. The internet wants you to buy a rifle for the shot you might take once in a lifetime across a massive valley. The older rural hunter buys a rifle for the shot he is most likely to take right in front of him, where brush, bone, and bad angles are the real enemies. If you hunt in the thick timber or deep woods, you rarely get a clear lane past 200 yards anyway. In that environment, the .300 Win Mag is an absolute hammer. The trade-off with the Savage 110 is that it is unapologetically utilitarian. The bolt lift can be heavy and stiff, especially after firing a Magnum round where the brass has expanded. The stock on standard models is basic, and it does absolutely nothing to soak up the sharp kick of the .300 Win Mag. You will feel this gun every time you pull the trigger. But for a guy who just wants to put meat in the freezer, a stiff bolt and a sore shoulder are completely irrelevant compared to the guarantee of a clean harvest. The Savage 110 is proof that if you never plan to shoot 1,000 yards, abandoning a Magnum that already works is a mistake. A standard Savage 110 Hunter has an MSRP of around $749, and you can usually find them in stores for about $650. But even with all of that practical logic, there is still one final reason why the older generation flat out refuses to leave the .300 Win Mag behind. And it goes far deeper than ballistics. We have reached the top of the list, and to understand the ultimate reason why older rural hunters push back against the modern caliber craze, we have to talk about the Ruger M77. This is where the debate over the .300 Winchester Magnum versus the 6.5 Creedmoor stops being about ballistic charts, recoil mitigation, and wind drift. and starts being about something much harder to measure. It is about absolute, unshakable trust. When a younger shooter looks at a classic Ruger M77 chambered in .300 Winchester mag, they see a heavy, old-fashioned piece of wood and steel that kicks like a mule and does not fit the modern definition of an optimized precision rifle. But when an older hunter looks at that exact same gun, he sees 30 years of proven history. He sees the rifle that rode behind the seat of his pickup truck over thousands of miles of rutted dirt roads without losing its zero. He sees the tool that sat in a freezing wall tent in Montana while the snow piled up outside, and still fired perfectly the next morning when a trophy bull stepped out of the fog. You simply cannot convince a man to trade that kind of reliability for a slightly better ballistic coefficient on a piece of paper. The Ruger M77 was engineered specifically to be rugged above all else. Bill Ruger wanted a rifle that would simply not fail under the worst possible conditions a hunter could face. The heart of the M77, particularly the Hawkeye and the older Mark II models, is a massive investment cast steel receiver featuring an oversized Mauser-style non-rotating claw extractor. Just like the Winchester we discussed earlier, it grabs the cartridge case immediately and refuses to let go. But Ruger took the concept of strength a significant step further. They designed their proprietary scope mounts directly into the receiver itself. There are no tiny, fragile screws to strip out, and no cheap aluminum rails to bend if the rifle takes a hard fall on the rocks. You just lock the solid steel rings directly into the steel receiver, creating a bomb-proof connection that can handle the violent recoil of a Magnum cartridge for decades. And underneath the action, Ruger used a unique angled action screw that pulls the recoil lug down and backward into the stock simultaneously. This specific design locks the heavy barrel and receiver into the wood with incredible force, ensuring that the brutal, repetitive recoil of the .300 Winchester Magnum does not shift the action and destroy your accuracy over time. This is the mechanical definition of an overbuilt firearm. When an older rural hunter carries a Ruger M77 into the timber, he is not worried about whether his rifle is the lightest, most comfortable option on the current market. He is worried about whether it will go bang when he is cold, completely exhausted, and staring down a massive moose at an awkward, fleeting angle. The .300 Win Mag perfectly matches the philosophy of the Ruger M77 platform. It is overwhelming, brutal force packaged in an unbreakable mechanical system. If a hunter misjudges the wind slightly, or if the animal takes a half step forward exactly as the trigger breaks, the sheer kinetic energy and massive weight of the heavy-magnum bullet provides a massive margin for error. The older generation knows from hard experience that hunting is an inherently chaotic pursuit. Things go wrong. You trip on a root, your scope gets bumped against a pine tree, your hands go numb from the sleet, and the animal almost never presents the perfect broadside textbook shot you practiced for at the flat range. In those unpredictable, chaotic moments, you do not want a delicate surgical instrument that requires absolute perfection to do its job. You want a sledgehammer that forgives your mistakes. And a Ruger M77 and .300 Winchester Magnum is the ultimate sledgehammer. The trade-off for this level of extreme durability is obvious to anyone who has carried one up a steep ridge. The Ruger M77 is unabashedly heavy, often pushing 10 pounds when fully scoped and loaded. The factory triggers on the older production models are notoriously heavy and sometimes slightly gritty, requiring a deliberate, forceful pull that younger shooters used to 2-pound match triggers simply hate. And because the rifle is so stiff and rigid, it transmits the raw, unfiltered recoil of the Magnum cartridge right into your shoulder. It is absolutely not a pleasant gun to shoot off a concrete bench. But the older rural hunter does not care about bench comfort. He cares about dropping the animal where it stands right now, with zero questions asked and no tracking required. The younger generation looks at the 6.5 Creedmoor and asks if the new technology is better on paper. The older generation looks at their scarred, battered Ruger M77 and .300 Winchester Mag and asks why they should ever replace something that has never once let them down when it mattered most. A brand new Ruger Hawkeye Hunter has an MSRP of roughly $1,279, with street prices usually hovering around $1,100. Though older used M77 models are heavily prized by collectors and practical hunters alike, and frequently sell for just as much. This is where the numbers end and the real decision begins. When you step back and look at the 300 Win Mag versus 6.5 Creedmoor debate, the choice comes down to what you are willing to risk. You have a precise modern cartridge that makes shooting easy, against an uncompromising Magnum that guarantees stopping power when comfort is gone. The internet will always favor the cartridge that looks best on a ballistic chart, but a paper advantage does not always translate to a mountain advantage. The biggest mistake a hunter can make is choosing a rifle for the perfect shot they hope to get, rather than the ugly reality they will actually face in the timber. Older rural hunters hold on to their heavy magnums because experience has taught them that perfect broadside opportunities are rare. And they demand the margin of error that massive kinetic energy provides. Does the modern efficiency of the new generation truly outweigh the proven stopping power of the old guard? If you're watching from the living room couch, pull out your phone, open up the YouTube app, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. Stay safe, stay informed, and I'll see you in the next one. This is Gunforge, signing off.